identified ourselves, being with an ID, being with a passport, being with a document that actually proves that we are who we say we are. And that's very controversial now in the States. It's a recent topic, well, not so recent really, but it's a new topic that's coming back again, especially with the Safe American Act, which tries to impose the citizenship certificate or some kind of proof of it, so that you are able to register and you're able to actually vote. But that's nothing uncommon in many countries, including countries in Europe, including countries in Latin America and in other parts of the world. In many countries, we do need some type of identification so that we can vote. On the one hand, you can actually ask, why is that isn't that a restriction of rights? And I would say no, it's actually the opposite. Because if you don't do that, you open the space for many other people trying to fake your identity, or trying to fake their identity to be able to vote under your name. And we have seen so many cases about this. We saw thousands of cases of dead people voting in many of the Latin American countries, especially in the socialist countries. Thousands of people obviously voting for the socialist governments. But that's one aspect that you have to consider. It's actually the opposite of restricting your rights. It's actually garnering you the right that you have to vote, and that no one else can tell or say that they are the person that they are, and probably under your name, and probably under the name of a dead person, or probably under the name of someone else, right? So that's actually protecting your right to vote, protecting your identification, protecting your identity. Actually, that would be one thing, and one specific thing to consider. And on the other hand as well, we have so much corruption, not only in the electoral system, but so much influence of specific groups, that they are trying to do anything that's possible and anything that's in their power to actually impose a fake majority. And we've seen it in so many cases, in so many countries, with people, meaning with these, for instance, narco-traffic groups paying off people inside the electoral offices, so that they can open the space for the registration of non-citizens, or for the registration of people that don't have any kind of identity, so that they can go and vote for candidates that will allow, and that will foster, and that will be the judges or approve laws in favor of criminals, in favor of narco traffickers, in like all of the spectrum of criminality that you can see or that you can consider. So on this other hand, I actually can say that it's not only protecting the right that you have to vote, protecting your identity to vote, and not faking your identity, and not others faking their identity for to create a supposed majority that will actually make decisions. And that's another problem in any case, because you would be creating, or that option would be creating a majority that does not exist, and will be voting for something that you didn't vote for, and complicated everything in the political spectrum, because they will be approving laws, they will be approving policies, they will be doing anything possible for something that you didn't vote for. right? So the Safe American Act, let me just show you a couple of, first, the Safe American Act, as you can see right here, it's an act to amend the national voter registration to require proof of United States citizenship to register an individual to vote in elections to federal office and for other purposes. That's so common for everyone else in any other country. If you want to vote, you actually have to have your ID. How do you get your ID? You go to the registration office, and then they, depending on the country, but normally they have the systems intertwined, so you can actually see your birth certificate, which is already registered in the system, and they will give you your vote ID. And with the vote ID, you will go during the election day, and you will go to vote, right? And in other countries, you can actually say yes, but in other countries that you can vote through mailing and so on. But in the majority of countries, that option is only available for some specific problems. For instance, you're an elderly. You don't have to vote in the majority of countries if you're an elderly, but you want to vote, so you register for this office to come and vote in your house. Oh, you have an illness and you cannot vote, but you want to vote. You will get the option to vote as well. But those are specific cases, right? Specific cases that do not validate the idea of just having a voting system without presenting the ID, or on the other hand, also just having mail systems of the ballots or of the votes to be counted as valid votes. So that's also another problem, because you can have that only in specific cases, in specific contexts, because of the same problem. You can actually fake the system somehow. And if you want to protect the system, and if you want to protect the validity of the votes, and if you want to protect what the majority actually says, that's actually democracy, you will have to protect all these possible problems that could arise during the election days. Let me give you an example. In the case of Ecuador, that has happened also in Colombia and in other countries, but some narco-traffic groups, they were, and also political groups, they were threatening families and they were threatening people with a photo of the election day and a photo of the ballot showing who you voted for. In that sense, that group could stop pursuing you, or could stop creating or giving you any hard time. So when the government in Ecuador realized this, they stopped, and they actually made it mandatory. They stopped people from coming for these offices to vote with cell phones or with cameras. It was illegal to take photos, and actually some of them that did decide to take photos, they received a fine. But that was a way of protecting not only the real will of people, but protecting the people also from this pressure from these narco-traffic groups, or the pressure from any political group as well, that could do damage to do, and you had to actually take a photo of the ballot and showing them that you voted for this specific candidate and this specific person. So you have many problems in electoral days, and those problems have to be solved. And there's no better way of solving it as restricting the specific problems that could arise and giving you all the freedom, all the privacy, and all the elements for you to vote. One of them, the ID and the presentation of ID. So here is a case of Colombia, every voter has to present an ID of citizenship to be able to vote. That happens also in other countries, like in Mexico. You can see here it's actually a photo of the ID that you have to present to vote. And I actually brought you to a list of countries. This is from the Pew Research Group of the Pew Research Center. You can see here more than half of the countries and territories have compulsory voter registration. That's actually very interesting. It's not only that the developed countries, it's not only that they are not, it's not mandatory for them to vote. You have a compulsory mandatory registration in many of the countries, in the majority of the countries and territories. You can see here in the map, including some parts in Europe, in Asia, even Australia, the majority of Latin America. The minimum age to vote being 18 for the majority, more than 90% of the countries. Ballots, used of postal ballots in their national elections, that was less than 40 countries. Less than 40 countries, okay? 40 used postal ballots in their most recent national elections. That was post COVID-19. But before COVID-19, that was even less. So it's not common that you actually just mail your vote, because it's on one case of the problems that I just mentioned. But on the other case too, it's of national importance. It's of national priority for you to go and vote in person. Only if you were ill, only if you were an elderly, only if you actually couldn't move. But because it's so important for the nation, and especially in the countries that it's not mandatory to vote, if you don't want to vote, don't vote, because it's so hard to go to these offices of these centers. So don't go and vote. It's not mandatory for you to do it, especially in some countries and some European, North American countries. But if you do want to vote, make the effort and vote, and be for some with some patriotic sense, trying to make it possible that the real majority of people is the real majority of votes that they are counting and reading. Yeah, paper ballots are by far the most common form of voting. That's after COVID-19. Votes are cast by manually marking ballots in 209 countries out of 227. Okay, not after COVID, I was mistaken there, but this is very common to actually have paper ballots. And most countries and territories allow voters abroad to cast ballots in some capacity. That many countries, I would say almost the majority of the countries, if you're living abroad, and you have an embassy, you will register yourself in that embassy in a specific day, could be week. You'll have to go to that embassy or to that consular office and vote. Some of them will allow you to vote through a system, an electronic system, or actually mail your vote. But that would count as being part of these very few cases in which could be allowed for your vote to be registered, not in presence. But in any case, even to register abroad, you will have to have your passport. And you can have your passport only if you were a citizen. So I wouldn't make a big deal and a big problem for the Safe American Act. I think that's the most common sense of countries. trying to protect the will of the majority and try to protect the will of the people, right? So consider this comment and consider the majority of the countries, they have the mandatory and compulsory law of presenting an ID to vote. And not only that, but in some, probably most of half of the countries, that vote has to be done in presence. Okay, so have a great day, and I'll see you next time.